Hi, I'm Kyle Denbach, and I'm going to answer the question, how hard should you train? So how hard should you train? This is actually a difficult question for a lot of people to answer, partly because of the current fitness culture of high-intensity interval training, Metcons, CrossFit, and this mentality that you should always go hard or go home. I'm going to help you kind of wade through this and actually figure out, how hard should you train on average on a day-to-day basis. But before we talk about that, I want to go over 3 principles that are very, very important in strength training. The first principle is consistency. You've got to keep coming back over the long term, weeks, months, and years to really reap the benefits. If you're training too intensely that you burn out or you get injured, you're not going to be able to maintain that principle. The second principle is you need to train hard enough. So if you're not really working that hard at all, you're not actually going to challenge your body to make the adaptations that you're looking for. And the third principle is something very foreign to a lot of people. It's the 3 F's. Your training should be frequent, fresh, and flawless. You need to train close enough together. Your sessions need to be close enough together that you're constantly pushing the body to adapt and adjust to the load being put on it. But you have to balance that with the fact that you need to train fresh. So in other words, if you're still sore from the last workout, you can't really be fresh, which means your power and your technique and your strength is going to be compromised in that session. This doesn't mean you can't lift heavy or train with intensity. It just means that the structure of your program needs to include things such as hard days, easy days, ladder sets, which I can discuss in a further video. So you can still train hard, but you need to train in a way that manages your fatigue within the session as well as across the training program. And the third principle is flawlessness. And this is related to the other 2. We want our technique to be flawless because strength is a skill. And if we don't manage our fatigue well, we're going to actually start to break down in our technique and our form and invite injury risk and also minimize our results. So with those 3 principles in mind, consistency, training hard enough, and maintaining the principle of frequent, fresh, and flawless, I want to talk about a little tool that I use generally to assess whether I'm training in the right zone. Hard enough, but not too hard. So I ask myself this question. After completing a training session, I say, could I repeat this tomorrow or the next day? And if the answer is yes, then I'm right in the zone. I'm training hard enough, or I'm not training too hard. Okay. Then I ask, could I repeat this training session right now? And if I say yes to that question, I'm probably not really working that hard, and I probably need to bump up the intensity a little bit. Obviously, there are days that should be that easy, but on the whole, that's a good principle. And if neither of those is the case, and it takes me maybe 3, 4, 5, 6 days a week to recover, that's not really an appropriate training session. That's not to say that you don't want to challenge yourself now and again. Obviously, runners want to run marathons. So they train, they build up all of that, they invest their training and they build up this capital that they're able to use to achieve a challenge, but then they have to recover afterwards. They're not training running marathons every single day. Powerlifters aren't lifting their PRs every day in training. Okay? They're building up interest on small and effective doses of training. So let's talk about 3 hypothetical examples to get a sense of how this would work. Okay, so our first subject will be Jimbo Jones. So Jimbo Jones trains all the time, loves exercise, but he doesn't really lift heavy. He's kind of lazy in the gym. He doesn't really push himself at all. So even though he's putting in all this practice and he is consistent and he's pretty fresh and flawless, he's violating the principle of training hard enough. He's never really challenging his body to adapt. He's always lifting the rubber-coated 2-pound pink weights. Okay, put it that way. And eventually he gets tired of not seeing results and he quits. So then he violates the principle of consistency. Okay. Subject 2 is CrossFit Kathy. So for CrossFit Kathy, every workout is in a hyper-competitive environment where she's jerking heavy weights overhead, performing Olympic lifts, as many as she can, against the clock to try to beat her peers. CrossFit Kathy doesn't really train all that much anymore. She likes to tell people she does CrossFit, but she's currently injured. So that kind of training approach could lead to burnout and very, very frequently injury. It's not to say that those kinds of trainings and workouts are incorrect, but they probably need to be balanced with more moderate and intelligent training approaches. Okay, and our third subject is plant-kind Patty. So plant-kind Patty has appropriately planned training sessions. She loves training because she's never too burnt out. She gets to finish a session and still do other things with her day and not complain about how sore her legs were, for example, after the training session. But she comes back regularly, which allows her to make slow but consistent progress over weeks, months, and years. She keeps coming back because it doesn't take all that much out of her. She pushes herself, but and occasionally she gets to break out of the training mold and challenge herself, perhaps going for a PR or running further than she's ever run before. But these efforts are appropriate because of all the investment and time that she's put into appropriate training. This kind of training compounds. So 10 years from now, she's probably going to be fitter and even stronger and more resilient than she was today. Okay? So I hope that helps you out. Ask yourself those questions. Could I repeat this session tomorrow? If the answer is yes, then you're right in the zone. If you couldn't repeat the session for 3 to 5 days, then you're training too hard. If you could repeat it right away, then you probably need to readjust your training program and push yourself a little harder. All right? Till next time, thank you very much. Like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Take care.